We have a few guests and new people, so I will introduce myself. I'm Jane Salem, and I coordinate education here at Bethel. And this is our first workshop of what we hope will be many more on different topics. But this is a really important one, disabilities and the church. And we're looking forward to have this be a starter for lots of good conversation and thinking about how we can be the most welcoming and inclusive church that we can. So we'll start today. We've got a variety of speakers, a lot to cover, so not all of them will be this light. There are a few in terms of text. There are a few that have a lot of information on them, but I'll say right away that I'll be going through much of what's on the slide, and we have a way for you to get a digital version of the PowerPoint slide, or if you don't receive email or do email, we have a few hard copies, so we can make sure if you'd like a copy of the slides, you can get them. I will tell you they are the second last version of the slides. I made a little change last night, but they're still good. So, all right, how about if we go to the next slide? I don't have a clicker, so we'll be sharing that way. So why are we doing this workshop? Well, we're trying to grow in our understanding of disabilities. We might think, well, we know what a disability is. Why do we need a workshop? I'm hoping that you'll learn something new. I think you will. You might know some of the things that we talk about, but I think there will be some good things for you as well. We're going to learn best practices of communicating with and about people with disabilities. We're going to talk about ableism and what that means. And we'll get to that, but it's like any other ism that you've heard of before: racism, sexism, ableism. So we'll talk about that. We're going to be aware of ways that we unintentionally put up barriers and appear unwelcoming, even when we think we're very friendly. There's more to it than that. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some steps and strategies that we can do to become an inclusive and welcoming church. We are going to try to understand ways Bethel and all churches can be a place that offers authentic understanding and worship and welcome. And that word authentic is the key piece. And we're going to be a place that follows the lead of Jesus and how he engaged with others. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda. Looks like a lot, but it'll move quickly. We've got some informational stuff at the top, some ways that you're going to interact and talk about some of the things that we're discussing, the topics, and get a feel for what people with disabilities would want you to know. And then we have some speakers that are going to talk a little bit about welcoming and working and supporting families and those with disabilities on all age spectrums, from our littles to our adults. And then we have Pastor Emily, who's going to give us some background from Scripture about Jesus' examples of being welcoming and inclusive of people with disabilities, and then give us some of our steps that we can do. So it's a lot, but we're gonna get it done. So next slide, please. Okay, Dan, could you hit the lights so that this is a little clearer? This is a very short video. I'm anxious to hear your feelings afterwards, so think about that. This was put up by the the Paralympic office right before the last Paralympic Games. Go ahead, Ed.
You're such an inspiration.
So brave.
You remind me to be happy.
I love that you don't let it get you down.
Good for you.
It breaks my heart.
Look at you out and about.
You push us all to do better.
You are superheroes.
Really?
Yeah, we're superheroes, all right.
For getting the kids out the door on time.
We push strollers.
Io sono il passeggino.
Not that one, brother.
Be grateful.
But there's nothing special about us.
We have mortgages.
Kill house plants.
Watch reality TV.
Pretend we're watching reality TV.
Wir essen with duvets.
Get sunburn on holiday.
And sometimes pee in the shower.
We're politicians and lobsters. Pension advisors.
We get married.
We met on a blind date.
And we can laugh at ourselves too.
We love our grannies.
And our go-go's.
We pray 5 times a day. And no, I'm not praying for a cure. I'm praying for a new handbag.
We swipe right.
We go on first dates.
And get lucky too.
So are the pedestals are nice?
And the pity tolerated.
We're not special. That's not what it's like.
Non è la nostra realtà.
And only when you see us
Wonderfully ordinary.
Wonderfully human.
Only then
can we all break down these barriers.
That keep us apart.
That's 1 billion people.
That's it. So we are the 15. What was different about that for you when you watched something like that with people with disabilities sharing their reality? Anything stand out to you? I enjoyed the people getting married, and they said, we met on a blind date. The point of that was they're both blind. So, and then the next slide was, or the next bit was, we can laugh at ourselves too. So, any thoughts? Bev, I'll repeat what you say. I'll repeat what you say. She was surprised at 15%. The name of the piece is We the 15. So yeah, 15% of the world's population, that's 1 billion people. And think about how large our country is at 300 and some million. So, anything else? Okay, next slide. Go back one. Yeah. So let's dig into those statistics, Bev, for you a little bit. 25% of adults in the United States have a disability. More than 15% of the world's population has a disability. 253 million people are affected by some form of blindness or visual impairment. This represents 3.2% of the world's population. That's twice Mexico's population. 466 million people have disabling deafness or hearing loss. This represents 6% of the world's population, as many as the inhabitants of the European Union. About 200 million people have an intellectual disability. This represents 2.6% of the world's population, and 75 million people need a wheelchair on a daily basis. This represents 1% of the world's population, the number of people in Canada. Next slide. So what do these mean? Why do we care? Of the over 1 billion people with disabilities in the world, it's estimated that only 5 to 10% of the world's population are reached with the gospel. People with disabilities are 40% more likely to report that they never attend worship. The pandemic pushed churches to create accommodations that made it possible for all people to participate during that time. We did that. We had wires out to the parking lot and Zoom meetings from all of the worship leaders' homes. Imagine having the same sense of urgency and placing the same value on a large segment of our community that face barriers every day. This is why we care. This is why it's important to think about this. What ways are we reaching people that have disabilities? What ways are we seeing people with disabilities not as this little chunk of people that need special things, like a handicap button or something like that? They are in the image of God, as we all are. And I have an important thing to say in a few minutes that will ring that true to you. But here we are, and we look at a group like this. What little thing can we buy? What little button can we put in? It's so much more than that. It's so much more of seeing why we are segmenting a population instead of making it accessible for all. And that's going to be our mantra for the day. How can the church include disabled voices? Make websites and all content accessible. And I agree, this probably isn't the most accessible, but that's what we have today. Remove barriers of all kinds. Respect and uplift the unique identities of disabled people. Make our church and its inclusivity known in the community and share God's love to all. This is the basis for this workshop and why we need to talk about it and think about it. It's a mindset shift. It's thinking about how we need to think of everybody when we plan things. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but an easy example is a friend of mine, is a young adult woman that was one of my fifth graders, actually. She is a grant writer for a nonprofit that works with people with disabilities, and a very strong Christian woman. Went to a new church, and she walks with difficulty, and one side doesn't work as well as the other. And they said to her, "We'd like you to come join our friendship group." They didn't show her to worship. They assumed she needed to go to the friendship group. Are we making sure that we're being open and authentic and greeting people as individuals versus you belong in this special group that we're going to take care of? And I get it from pretty good authority that people with disabilities don't always want to be taken care of or fixed. I don't know, I hear that a lot from someone. Next slide. Okay, look at, I have my stuff out of order. So some types of disabilities. These are just broad categories. I'm not going to read all of them, but you can see chronic illness, mental health, vision, neurological disorders. We hear the word maybe now more often neurodivergent. Those are all broad categories. In that brown box, it says, many disabilities like autism or cerebral palsy don't fit neatly into one category, and many or multiple disabilities can coexist within one person. So it's not an easy thing to categorize, and we don't want to do that. Okay, next slide, please. So we've got three other categories. We've got apparent or visible disabilities. These are the things that you can notice. Someone uses a walker or a wheelchair. Someone who is blind. Someone who has hearing aids, if you can see them. Something that you might be able to see. Someone that has a difficult time walking from the parking lot. They're the ones that we, in our minds, say, oh yes, you deserve that handicap sticker. And sometimes we're not so nice when we look at somebody getting out of a car that looks like they're just fine. And I'm using words that you can hear my air quotes in my voice. But there are non-apparent or invisible disabilities. You might not be able to tell what the disability is. And then temporary or acquired. This is a really important thing to think about. Temporary, obviously, is something like a broken bone that's going to heal. Acquired could be something like hearing loss or brain injury or paralysis that you're not born with, that you acquire throughout your lifetime. I know you can't see it real well in that brown box, but I'm going to read it slowly. Disabilities are the only thing we all have the potential to share at some point in our lives. So as you age, if you have a stroke, if something happens, you lose your hearing starts to diminish over time, or there's an accident, a sudden paralysis. We all have the ability to share this one thing in our lives. So that's why it's so important to understand disabilities as part of the human experience, not this group. You don't get to fall in the group and then you're isolated and alone. We want access for all. Next slide. How are we doing? Oh, I think we'll ask you guys to come up. Alex and Dan. Alex, my son, is a member of this congregation, has been since his teeny tiny birth, and he wanted to say a few things and help me make some points. So he's going to do a little interview with Dan. We've crafted it so it goes that way. And if you can't hear them, they're going to share the handheld. I do have copies of his interview, so I'll make sure you get a copy of that when you leave. So this is a conversation with Alex Salem. Having a disability is complicated, and there are his key points.
Al.
Oh, Al, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
He needs a thing.
I was gonna say, he needs his thing.
So, Al, all right, I'm gonna try to stay on script, but you know me.
Oh, boy.
So, I understand you've had your disability since birth. It has changed over the years, and so has how you interact with the world around you as that changes. Can you just give us a little overview of what your disability is?
My disability comes from a disease I was born with. I can't metabolize carbohydrates or sugars, but I can only eat plain meat. If I eat carbs, it can cause problems not right away, but over time. It can cause my body to degenerate, but the changes in my body can also happen from just having the disease itself. Not eating carbohydrates helps keep the disease progression at bay. When I was younger, I didn't have as many physical challenges as I do today.
So, Al, yeah. I've had the distinct pleasure of being with you and your family for most of your life, and it involved going out to eat a lot. And I remember the days when we measured how much you were eating, and there was, it was very good for my family and my kids to see that it wasn't something that you had to be completely separate, as we all participated in it. And as you know, Al every so often has to take a shot of oil to keep his kind of system going. Imagine taking a shot glass of oil every so often, just like olive oil. And he has a special glass in our house when he's over for that oil, so that it becomes part of our everyday life. So, Al, how do you see yourself as a person with a disability?
It's a basic part of my identity, but I don't want to be identified. I don't want it to define me. I also want to be much more than my disability.
You are much, much more than that, Al, as we all know. What would you want people, though, to know about how you identify with your disability? Because it is a part of who you are.
Having a disability has brought me some amazing experiences, friends, and a whole culture and community. I'm proud of who I am, but also I don't want to be thought of just being a disabled person. I want people to know me and just see me and not see me through the lens of my disability. I'm a college graduate. I love sports. I know a lot about them. I love to garden and be outside and exercise at the gym. But I also struggle with doing physical things. Even just daily things. I see many ways where society doesn't always make an equal place for people with disabilities. Not all people with disabilities have the same experience.
So, talk to me a little bit about that, about the society part of it. How do people in society do that? How do they do it that they don't treat everybody the same way?
Society doesn't see how barriers of all kinds are all throughout the places we live, go, and work. It is more than physical barriers too. When we plan things like activities, make sure people with disabilities or different needs have access. Do you think about food and making sure when we have an event we offer vegetarian things or plain meats without sauces and gluten-free things? Do we invite people with all kinds of disabilities to be on committees and leadership opportunities? When we choose a place of meeting or get together, do we choose places that have accessible bathrooms and entries for the ability to get there by paratransit or providing transportation for people who don't drive? People are often focused on the disability or see people with disabilities as amazing because they live a life that doesn't focus on the disability. People should focus on how you can make sure people with disabilities can do all things life requires without it being seen as miraculous. We are a special group that needs special things. As churches, people, and as a society, we should make sure that everyone is thought of when building or organizing. We need to help all people see that it's okay to do things differently. Differences are good. It helps all of us live complete lives in the ways each of us needs to. We all fit in. We all deserve fun and jobs and socializing with everyone. We aren't just separate groups.
I'm going to repeat the one thing that you said in there that I really, really love. We all fit in. We all fit in. We have enough room for everyone to fit in, right? There's room for everybody at this table. Is there anything else you want to let these fine people know?
I always want people to know to treat everyone equally. People with disabilities are people wanting the same things as everyone. It is also very important that people without disabilities understand that people with disabilities need you to ask before you help. We understand that people want to make sure that we are okay or don't need anything, but just stepping in to help can hurt us both, and it takes away our being independent. It is also about personal space too. It isn't that we don't appreciate care and concern, but treat people with disabilities where you want to treat anyone. We want people to understand that we aren't special just because we do ordinary things. We live lives just like you guys. Include our voice in things. Don't assume what we need.
Al, that was great. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing, as always, to help this great community be even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Al. Want me to take that for you? Okay. Okay, next slide. So I have a little activity for you. I'm going to give everyone a sheet, and on the front and back are, I don't know, 7 quotes. These were taken from a document that asked disabled people to tell what they would want other people to know. Now, I don't want to take time and have you read one and talk about it, and read another one and talk about it, and read another and talk about it. So I'll have you look at it yourself, or really better, to connect with someone around you and read them, just read them out loud to each other, and then you can have a minute or two to talk about it. But the important thing is that you read all of them. So do that first, okay? I'll give you one here. Becky, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And there, it goes on to the back, so. Thank you, Dan. Can you shoot one now? Thank you. There you go. There you go, of course. You guys good? Okay. I'll give you a few minutes to talk. You don't have to read them to yourself. You can read them to each other. Get with a little small group and talk about them. Thank you. While you're doing that, I'm just going to put copies of Alex's interview on the pew, or you can set them next to you, whatever, just so we get that out to you. Okay, make sure that you've read through them in the next couple of minutes. Maybe have a chance to chat or share your own experiences. I don't know. Okay, 30 seconds. Let's wrap it up. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but as you can see, it kind of echoes some of the things that Alex said, coming from a wide variety of people. So I just wanted you to have that as a resource to see how we sometimes think about things. And this isn't supposed to be a big, like, ugh, we do so many things wrong. That's not it. It's not an indictment about how we do things, nothing like that. It's about being aware. And once we know better, we do better. Okay, next slide. So really quickly, I'm the information girl, and then we have the application folks in a minute. Ableism. So what is ableism? Ableism is just like any other ism, racism, sexism, all of those things. It's the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities. And it comes from, a lot of times, it's not intentional, but it comes from that understanding of this being a small, isolated group rather than making ways for people to be a part of access for all. And I'll say, too, it's access, not excess. People with disabilities aren't looking for something bigger or special or something. They just want to have access to groups, to everything, to life, without being seen as this special, smaller population. Take away that, and not excess, just access. So ableism is real. It's not just something in people's minds. It affects the quality of life of many people, jobs, access. Little tiny examples. I speak more from having experience with someone with a physical disability. So when it's winter and we pull up to park and I can't get the wheelchair next to the car because there's so much snow. Now, I know that that's a problem when we have a big snow, but even when they're just clearing the sidewalks, they just clear the sidewalk. They don't clear it all the way to the curb. It's little things like that. I can't move that wheelchair in the slush in the same way. Stopping ableism happens by seeing the needs and value of people with disabilities, even though it takes that mindset shift. Believe it or not, organizations and society have laws against discrimination, but even within an organization that has laws, there are people that don't follow them. Shocking to say. You would think that we have this population that we tend to be overprotective of, but we don't actually follow through with them all the time. Next slide. So some examples of what ableism looks like. This is a lot, and again, you can look, I can get you that PowerPoint. But things like segregating students and adults with disabilities. I gave you that example before. Another one that is near and dear to my heart that I would love everybody to just grab on with me and take this ride. If you think about people and where they live, available housing for people with physical disabilities and all disabilities is small because of how we've built homes over the years. Of course, we didn't think about that. We have these tiny houses with little staircases and turns and little halls. Wouldn't it be great, just go with me on this journey for a minute, wouldn't it be great if starting right now, it became code to do universal design in every house that is built? What's universal design? Universal design is wider hallways, wider doorways, places for wheelchairs to go under a sink, differences in heights in countertops in kitchens so that anybody can cook from anywhere. So you might say, universal design, that sounds ugly to have these big holes. Wouldn't people not like them? I challenge you to go online and look up universal design kitchens and universal design bathroom examples. They're stunning. They're so lovely. And think about what that would do. It's going to build our housing stock so that people with disabilities now can move. When they go to look for a house, if they're going to purchase a house or rent a house, they're so limited. But as we do that, it would grow and grow and grow. And it goes back to my point that we all have the ability to share in a disability at some point. And even as we age, and you can't stay in your house, it's too big or this or that, now we can have homes that other people can, all people, everybody, can live in that fit everybody's needs. What a wonderful world that would be. So those are some examples. You might think, well, that's not ableism. Well, kind of is, because we're excluding people. That's the point. You can read a lot of these yourself. Alex said several of them, using a disability as a joke's punchline or mocking people with disabilities, pretending you can't hear or you can't speak in some kind of a mocking way. That's ableism. Expecting people, this is an important one that goes with the church, expecting people to modify sensory sensitivities, communication styles or behaviors to fit societal norms. Here's a church example. If we expect our church to be reverent and silent and quiet all the time, it's not very welcoming. We all wiggle. We all have to move around. Sometimes we have to cough. Sometimes people need to make a noise or get up or go to a sensory area or they're upset by sounds or lights. Those things are all important considerations as we think about how to be inclusive as a church. Okay, next slide. Okay. I think let's move on, and I will give you this activity or tell you about it later if we have time. But we have 3 people that we want to make sure. This checklist is very interesting. You do it for yourself and check if you can do these things, and then it makes you think of how many people can't do all of those things. So it's a good one. All right, let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to ask Tanya Farron to come up. She is the director of our Middleburg Early Education Center. We're so proud of her and the wonderful work she does. And I'm going to give you this.
I'm not a microphone.
You have to be, though, so because we're putting it on. So you have to be. You can do it. And she's going to talk to us. Yeah, hold it right up.
All right.
There
so,
you go.
As Jane said, my name is Tanya Farron, and I am the director of Middleburg Early Education. In my intro, I like to put it that I'm a teacher first. I enjoy being in the classroom, and I'm still there every single day. So, thank you very much to Jane putting together this amazing workshop. I've actually learned so much going through the process. So Middleburg Early Education was founded in 1973 as an outreach program of Bethel Lutheran Church. And here's a fun fact for you. We were actually the first full inclusion preschool program in Cuyahoga County. So that's something to be proud of. So, with the support of the Bethel congregation, Meek has thrived through the years to provide children with different abilities to learn side by side with typical learners, building understanding, empathy, and compassion as they learn. And I feel very fortunate that all 5 of my children are Meek graduates. So when my oldest son was diagnosed with autism, I felt blessed. I called Miss Marilyn, I got put on the long wait list, but I got in. And then my second son was diagnosed with autism. And for those of you that don't know, the autism spectrum is very, very big. So I have a son who is technically considered nonverbal, even though I understand what he wants very, very well. And then you could just have somebody who is this brilliant savant, but maybe just doesn't interact well with others. So then I had the good fortune of allowing my other 3 children to benefit from the excellent preschool education here and being peer models, and I was just so proud of each one of them as they graduated. So a little bit about Meek. Our mission is to provide positive self-esteem, and we want that fostered through that inclusion model. So we are going to be developing core values of acceptance, understanding of diversity, helpfulness, empathy, and patience. And this quality of education is provided for all of our students in the least restrictive environments. We want to give them developmental appropriate practices, intervention strategies, but also enrichment. You would be surprised how many of the students here I have to research very carefully before I talk about planets, dinosaurs, construction, because they know so much more than me. So it's really quite interesting. So on this next slide, we have an adorable picture of our pre-K students. And I put this up here to give you a better understanding of different disabilities. So I have to tell you, when I sat down with Jane and listened to the obstacles that Al and her overcome with a physical disability, I learned quite a lot. I'm not used to thinking in that realm. I'm thinking more of cognitive impairments. So when you look at these adorable children, does it really stand out who is supposedly special needs? All right? This is a great example of what Jane was talking about, those invisible disabilities. So guess what? All of these children are special, right? Think about your children. They're all special to you, right? Absolutely. So sometimes they're visible and sometimes they're not. So during my presentation, a large population of our students here at Meek are working through the complications of autism. And that can be a disability that can be visible and it can be invisible. So I'm going to concentrate on that one. So on this next slide here, it shows one objective of this workshop, and that's to gain a better understanding of different disabilities. So I am a special needs teacher. I am a parent of special needs sons. I am also the coordinator for Strongsville Special Olympics, and guess what? I still have so much to learn. And that's how I felt in my conversations with Jane. So you're already taking the first step in that process because we appreciate you being here. We appreciate your time and your willingness to learn something new. So let's get back to that part of understanding. Let's say that you are out in a community and you witness a child having an outburst. There's a lot of hystericalness going on, and you might find yourself saying, they really need to fix that kid, or my child would have never had that kind of behavior. Now, hopefully you do that in your head, okay? That's the first thing you should do. But I'm sure we've all seen this before. But did you know that there is a difference between a tantrum and a meltdown? Okay, so a tantrum is very common for all young children, but it's typically goal-oriented behavior. It's something very, very specific, driven by this frustration or this desire to get a specific outcome. And that child can often be influenced by external factors. I want that toy, I want a Happy Meal. Meltdowns, on the other hand, are involuntary responses to very overwhelming situations for them, often caused by sensory overload or emotional dysregulation, and they're much harder to control or influence from the outside. So both tantrums and meltdowns can involve these intense emotional outbursts, but the key difference is what caused it. How can we control it? Now think about that parent who's trying to work through this with a child who has this invisible disability that you can't see. Parenting in itself can be one of the hardest jobs, but now we've added all these multiple layers on top of there. So some of you might be baffled by some of the words, the whole sensory overload, dysregulation. So on this next slide, we are going to take a walk in a young man's shoes, and he is going to go out to the mall. And at the end, I'm going to ask you what things stand out to you, what things you never thought would be a problem. Since none of you have been taught by me, I just want to give you fair warning. I call on everybody. You can have your hand raised or not raised. Miss Tanya will still call on you. So, all right, let's go ahead and show our video, please. So I love how this is from his vantage point. So he's trying to regulate himself.
I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information. I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information.
Okay then, now it's your turn. What is something that surprised you, something you didn't think about? What do you think, Becky? Because I know your name. I'm going to say, not knowing this boy, I would like to give a shout out to him, though. This boy on his own has videotaped these and came up with this idea with the help of his parents and his friends, trying to convey how his brain works. So a lot of these children, they have a tendency to do what we call stimming. It helps them regulate that, and that's a great question. Some kids are all about the numbers, the letters. We have kids that will just like read things. It kind of makes them feel good. And I'm sure many of you do that in your own lives. There's something, you're in a stressful situation, maybe, you're just like, okay, I sometimes like pinch myself. I'm like, okay, Tanya, you can get through it. It's okay, So yes, he was trying to regulate himself. So that's a good one. Anyone else surprised by something? Gail. absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And all of their senses many times are super, super heightened. So yes, did you have something you had back here? Exactly. You would be having a meltdown because it is so much to take in. Now, I will say my oldest son is going to be 29. And it's some of those senses we learn how to adapt with some of them. But especially when they are learning and they are young, it is so much. And I love this because it gives us like a completely another perspective of it. Anyone else have anything they want to add? Yes, ma'am. You know how we keep hearing that there's more and more children diagnosed with autism? Well, one reason might because we have better diagnostic tools. But I think back to before I was born, even probably, how there wasn't this amount of stimulus that, there were not malls that had all these things going around, blah, 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 They were simpler times, weren't they? Some of the people that had autism, but they didn't have that kind of stimulus that was making them go nuts. Exactly. They were outside playing in their yard because your parents said you go outside and you play till it's time for lunch. And then sometimes they even just gave you the lunch at the picnic table. Okay, we'll see you in the house at dinner time. So they were, I think a lot of them, I think that's a great point. They were able to adapt because the world was quieter. They had more time to themselves. Now our kids are super duper busy and we have a lot of expectations, and that's a great point that you bring. So yes, thank you. Jane, did you have something?
I was gonna say, I think the thing was the very end when he said, I'm not naughty, I'm overstimulated. I'm not naughty, I have autism.
Absolutely, a very, very powerful point. And then part of my heart broke for that young man because he's obviously higher functioning. And, the lady who's walking, giving that look like, oh my gosh, like he's taking all of that in. I think a lot of times we don't understand with those heightened senses how much these children take in that we don't even know about. My son would not respond to his name, but other things, he would hear conversations I was having with other, children in the house, and he would know what's going on. And I was like, how did he get his shoes on and go to the car? I didn't even say anything yet. They're always listening, and so it's kind of unfortunate. That young man, he feels the need to say, I'm not naughty, I have autism. So that's a great one. I will tell you one that I figured out in the hardest way was the balloons. The balloons in there. Some kids with autism, when I will have balloons set up in the gym that we're gonna do for a visual tracking activity, they are just cringe. Or we have one of those immediate drop to the floor and meltdown. Why? The anticipation that that balloon can pop. Ooh, that is going to really, really hurt my ears, So lots of things to think about with that one. So now I want you to think about how an individual with autism might have to cope attending your church. So Jane already brought up some of these. Maybe it's the lights. Maybe it's the fact that Tanya's tripping out a little bit. The lights were dark, now they're back on. We have Pastor Emily up here talking. We've got someone that's coughing, someone that's shuffling with their papers. And so to many of us, we could be like, oh, that child again is screaming over there. But many times, like we said, there is a reason behind that. So that's when it becomes very tricky, I think, as an educator to figure out how do we deal with these individuals, okay? We want to take in consideration that they have all these things going on, and I'm not asking anybody to just not address the behavior of a child because they have special needs, okay? But I really encourage people to really take into consideration the sensory needs first, okay? Once you have the sensory needs met, and you know they've had a break, they've gotten maybe some deep pressure, a drink of water, they've been able to do their numbers or their letters or everything, then it's time to get down to brass tacks. We've got to deal with that behavior. Because, yeah, you're a 3, but we can't have you doing that when you're 13. So it's a very fine line, I feel like, and one that I deal with all the time, and yet I'm still sometimes scratching my head. So I can only imagine for some of you that don't live that life all the time. This next slide, another reason why you're here is we're trying to figure out how can we be more inclusive. And Disability Pride refers to a movement that celebrates and affirms the experiences, identities, and the contributions of individuals with disabilities. So we ask that you embrace the disability. And that goes back to recognizing that that disability is an integral part of their life. They look at it as, I have the super strength. I am resilient. We love our child because they are unique. Yes. Do I want my child to talk? Absolutely. Do I wonder what he would sound like? Yes, all the time. But there are so many things I would never trade that in to have Zachary be Zachary. So that's one important thing. Challenging ableism, so confronting and dismantling all those societal prejudices. Also having expectations of these children. So my boys go to all these athletic events. So we're playing football, and they're supposed to, run the 40-yard dash. And there is my son. And all the volunteers are going, yay, Zachary, go Zachary. There's mom at the end. Zachary, that was terrible. That sucked. You need to go back and you need to try that and you need to really give it your all and run. And then I am running along with him, pushing his back, and now he's shuffling, okay? So really understand that they are capable of so much. And I'm always so happy that volunteers are so kind, but at the same time, you're telling them good job for what? Tricky for them. They don't really know his effort. So challenging them, promoting accessibility, advocating for equal access to opportunities, resources, and things like that. Recognizing, celebrate. Everyone wants to be celebrated when they do something well. And building that community. So fostering that sense of belonging and support among individuals with disabilities and others. And this is like the hope for our community. It's the hope for our whole world. And like I said, thank you very much for taking the first step. The next slide is really focusing on a child with autism. How can I help them? So the first step is communication strategies. You need to use simple and clear language. And I recommend you call their name first. So it's so much easier to say, you need to stop doing that. No, you need to be quiet. Oh, we are listening to Pastor right now. It's just too much. But if I go, Anita, she got my point, okay? I've used her name. There's a lot of power in knowing their name. And then what I did was I coupled that with a visual aid. Okay, in Meek we have little cards with pictures, maybe a stop sign or something like that, but there's a lot of nonverbal. There's, some simple, waiting, we are waiting, all done, some sign language that you could use as well. And just reducing that verbal overload, because when we're just going and everybody is saying, you need to stop running, you need to be quiet, you need to wait, guess what? You all turn into the teacher from Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. They're tuning you out because, gosh, you're just hurting their little tiny ears, right? Creating a supportive environment. And so just thinking about all the different ways that we can help them. We want you to be active listeners. Whoops, I got off track. I want you to be active listeners. Not only listen to that child, but read their nonverbal, if you see that little shift going around, that means, need to go move my body a little bit. Routines and structures. Children with autism, like all of us, we like our structure, we like our routine, and guess what? That's the great thing about church. You guys are all about the structure, right? We know when the readings are coming. We know when pastor's going to give the sermon. You know when you're going to stand up and peace be with you, okay? They love that. I'll tell you, my one son, who's on the way other side of this autism spectrum, during COVID, he was watching this service and 2 Catholic services because it just felt good. You know, he knew what to expect. But then sometimes there's little changes, and so you got to give them a heads up. We all appreciate that. Creating that supportive environment. So at Bethel, you're fortunate. You have that small nursery in there. It's a great place to take a break, get some deep pressure, and we ask you to acknowledge all the positive things that they do. Some little things that help besides the sensory break: give a little fidget toy, give clear expectations, understand their sensory needs. You would be surprised how bright children with autism are, even the ones that don't talk. Yeah. Let me tell you, I've bought very good vacuums, garage door opener, a car, all based on information that I got from children with special needs. Because they are like little Google heads in there. I mean, they can spit out the facts and everything else. So really embrace all of the wonderful gifts that they have. And finally, build that relationship. Don't just build a relationship with the child, build it with the family, build it with the siblings. Ask them questions. You are gonna learn so much from them, and they're gonna have a lot of funny stories. Just like I give Zachary a lot of baloney about lack of his athletic ability in running. On the last slide, how to be a buddy. So here we have an acronym. Be there for them and their parents. Understand them by learning about them and their disability. Don't accept them for their differences. Don't force them to fit in. Have clear expectations, and you can make a difference while supporting a wonderful family. So this last slide is just something I thought that was interesting. Understand that our children are special just the way they are. Your words, attitudes, and actions impact their lives more than their actual disability. And I cannot thank you enough for all of your time this afternoon and really opening your hearts and making a difference. So give yourself a round of applause.
Thank you, Tanya. Carol Kay is going to give us a few words about our God's Faithful Followers ministry, and then Pastor is going to give us some final thoughts.
Chances are it would roll off. I'd rather just do that handoff.
Hello, everyone. Many of you know that God's Faithful Followers has been an important part of my life, and I'm so extremely grateful to God and Bethel Lutheran Church for this ministry. I, along with other GFF volunteers, have been blessed to know and spend time with our GFF friends who participate in the weekly program, as well as the dedicated caregivers and family members who support our GFF friends. Over the years, our ministry program has served adults with intellectual, physical, and mental disabilities. And today, I'd like to focus on one GFF person named Deanna Dilley, who is a high school graduate and will soon be 45 years old. She has 2 disabilities, a physical disability, several actually, and a mental disability. She has Beals syndrome, which is joint contractures, and she deals with severe depression and anxiety. In a recent magazine article, and I brought the magazine, it comes out once a year, called Live Special, they've interviewed and featured Deanna. So I learned other things about her when I read the article. But before I discuss the article, I'd like to share that when Deanna first started attending GFF, she was noticeably very quiet. She could answer almost every Bible lesson question asked, but she was hesitant to speak up unless someone asked her directly, like Tanya. I've since learned from the article that Deanna was bullied at school a lot and did not know how to stand up for herself. And writing was the only way she could express herself when unable to say things verbally. We noticed at GFF her untapped abilities and encouraged her to play an integral role in our activities. With a little prodding, she flourished. She designed the theme for our talent show entitled Jesus, the Final Answer, and also served as the narrator. The next year, she took on the role as MC for our fashion show. One particular meeting, her mom brought her to GFF instead of her caregiver, and she sincerely thanked us for encouraging Deanna to lead and orchestrate the various events. Mrs. Dilly credited GFF and Bethel for giving Deanna the confidence to speak in front of groups. These days, Deanna has no hesitation about reading her poetry in front of groups. She has participated in 3 razzle-dazzle performances for the past 3 years at the Beck Center for the Arts. Today, I'd like to read the poem published in the article and from my framed copy that Deanna gave me as a gift. Her poem is a message to the non-disabled community to show them that we work just as hard, if not harder than they do, in order to get what we need and want. And the poem is entitled, I Wish the World Knew. My copy. I wish the world knew the struggles disabled people go through. Some people think everything is handed to us, and we are all helpless. They just don't understand. I wish the world knew the feelings that we all share, disabled or not. We can all feel sad and lonely at times. We all feel joy and happiness too. Some people need to open their eyes. I wish the world knew that we can do anything they can do. Yes, we may need extra help, but that doesn't stop us from trying our best. Please take the time to lend a hand. I wish the world knew that no 2 people are exactly the same. Wheelchairs, walkers, and crutches, glasses, white canes, and hearing aids don't define who we are. They just make us a little more unique. Let's give Deanna a hand.
Thank you, Carol. Pastor Emily. Do you want the stand? Okay.
We can flip to the next slide. Welcome all who are visiting with us, and thank you all again on behalf of Bethel, taking time out of your day. One of the things we always want to tie everything, I always say everything we do here as the body of Christ on Sunday mornings is just like the rehearsal for what we do the rest of the week. And I always look at Jesus' leadership style through the lens of John 13 through 34, where Jesus says, "A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you are my disciples if you have love for one another." Every Sunday when I come and preach here, one of the things you will always hear me emphasize in my ministry here with all of you and here at Bethel is that we are all made in the image of God. And so we don't see our neighbors differently or special. They are beloved children of God. And when we talk about Jesus' leadership style, I'm only going to lift up one because I'm trying to be mindful of time today, but one story that hit me in particular this past week and a half. From Luke 18:35 through 43, the story of Jesus and the blind man at Jericho. It was interesting when I was looking at this story. There are two versions of the story. The one in John names the blind man as Bartimaeus, and in Luke, he is unnamed. I always find that interesting. But in Luke's account of this passage, the crowd who initially sees this beggar ignores the man and walks by the blind man. And I started thinking about that. How many times in my life have I walked past somebody for whatever reasons, right? The community literally and figuratively in this passage does not see the unnamed man. The man persists and shouts louder and calls Jesus the Son of David. And Jesus directly asks the man, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the man replies, "Lord, I want to see." When I think about that verse and Jesus' ministry of compassion for the neighbor, this man isn't just asking for restoration of his physical sight. He is asking for restoration of sight to be seen, acknowledged, to be part of the community that keeps walking past him. This man wants to be accepted and affirmed as a human being made in God's image and not simply because he has a disability. Jesus says, "Receive your sight, your faith has healed you." And in this moment, it's not just about the man being physically restored to his sight, a healing. This man is finally affirmed and acknowledged and seen by the crowds who previously bypassed him on the road. There is also a restoration of sight by the community as Jesus shows compassion and God's love to this man and doesn't simply ignore or define the man by his lack of eyesight. Jesus treats him as a child of God. And it leads to a life change not only for the man, but for the community restored. So I always ask ourselves as the church, wherever we're at, who's not here with us? Right? We get focused on who's just here, but who's not here? And why are they not here? And there's 100 different reasons for that, but if we are putting barriers in the way that don't allow people to have accessibility, whatever that is, to me, that's not acting with compassion and loving God's people, right, our neighbors. I would say Jesus very often, over and over again, you will see various examples through Scripture. But I picked that particular passage because something I saw, some of you may have watched the church-wide assembly at some point, maybe in last week in July. We have a bishop in our synod, in our church-wide, Bishop Craig Satterley, who was up throughout this little debate they're having, doing church business. Bishop Craig Satterley is blind. And he finally got mad and he got to a microphone and he said, "I don't know how many times, presiding bishop, and to the conference of bishops and to all of you in this room, I am blind and you keep saying, look at the screen for whatever's up on the screen." And he's like, "You won't even read what you're talking about." Yeah, silence went in the room. And he's been a bishop for a really long time. And that was at a church-wide level. But then I thought about how many times have I done that? Or we have done that, right? Make assumptions, do X, Y, Z. So when we talk about what does it mean to be an inclusive church, it's a couple things. It's more than just physical barriers. If we switch to the next slide. There's physical barriers and there's social barriers. what does an inclusive church mean? For the physical barriers, it's providing access without limitation. Now, there's some churches, you go into the buildings, you can't access anything. Like my home church closed in 2021, they have steps everywhere. And even though we had like a chair ramp thing, it didn't work half the time, right? So if people can't physically get in and out of spaces, that's one thing. Enable independence. Can a person with a disability get from the parking lot to entrances and room entrances, bathrooms and stalls, navigate all doorways, and be able to participate in all activities and volunteer opportunities of the church? So that becomes important, right? As we're planning stuff. Like next week, we're going to have a church picnic. It will be outside or it will be inside. We have to think about what does that look like for everyone attending, right? How do we get in and out? Our bathrooms, we are in the process as a council to address accessibility because we have bathroom doors. Right now, if I have any kind of walker, wheelchair, I can barely get in. Those doors are heavy. I can't get out, right? Not helpful.
I have to add one thing because Alex brings it up all the time. The handicap stall in the bathroom cannot hold a mobility scooter and close the door. So if Alex needs to go in the bathroom, or any person, but he's my person that explained it to me, you can't go in and close the door because they're not built big enough for a mobility scooter.
Right.
And that's not just here, it's throughout the community.
Right. Improving safety, right? How does someone with a hearing disability know the fire alarm is going off, for example? If you can't hear and you're in a space, you might not know the fire alarm has gone off. And there's like thousands of examples of that, right? But some of the other things I think that are more subtle when I think about, especially when we talked about hidden disabilities. I had a situation one time, I was at a church that had an intergenerational vacation Bible school. And it came time to divide up the adults to the various age groups of children. And there was a family of 3 with a mom, single mom. And 2 of her kids, one kid had ADHD, another kid had autism, and the other kid had something else going on. And mom had severe anxiety. And so we're at this vacation Bible school, and now the leader is like, we're all gonna divvy up in groups now. Well, those kids went into full meltdown. And the volunteers, God bless them, they're like, but you need to go into your groups. They were focused on whatever their goal was. And the mom was like, can't I just take these kids and have them be part of whatever group over here, and I'll be with them? And some of these volunteers were like, oh no, the rules say. Well, that's not helpful, right? Guess what happened that day? Mom left. Never saw those kids again. And that was unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Or what's the one thing we love to do at church? We love to greet people, right? We all know each other. We shake hands. Sometimes we'll hug one another. But those hidden disabilities, right? For somebody who might be on sensory overload, that might be overwhelming. If I come up and go, hey, Tanya, right? We need to be mindful of that. Shane hit on this before, removing social barriers. We all have talked about this before. People are going to make noise in worship. I know of churches right now, Goodsell, Rocky River, up the road from us, they have a sensory space in their church where kids can do sensory activities. They are still part of worship. And they have taken out some of their pews, and that is a dedicated space, right? But they still have an option if they need to go out, but not separating them out from the rest of the group. And so these are things we need to be thinking about. out, right? And not just for this church, but beyond the church. And then also, if somebody's making noise, right, not to be like, well, can't we make that, I'll pick on my child, my Elizabeth quiet, right? Because you know what? People can't always. So how can we be thinking about that and then casing that? But always to make sure that whatever we are doing as the body of Christ, inside and outside, that we are being mindful that thinking about Jesus' commandment, loving one another, and how can we be inclusive so that we provide inclusive participation for all and not segregating people out. So I'm trying to hurry, so I'm good. Was there anything else you wanted me to add?
Give me 1 second to go to my little thing. Thank you all. Stand up because you've been sitting, but I have in the back, if you want to just show the next couple slides. I'm not going to take time to do a whole big Q&A because you can ask me questions. You can ask questions if you need to get up, absolutely. But all of this stuff is in a resource packet that we have available for you in the back. If you could take one per household, there's a stack of them back there. Again, at that table, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, you can sign up and we'll email that out to you. And then the next one, those are some books that are at the back table that you can look at. But I love that. Do you see me or my disability? And you see the person, but then the words are friend, student, citizen, advocate, employee, taxpayer, voter, dreamer, and so on. So, again, I can't thank you enough for being here. It's so great that we have the chance to provide these different kinds of educational experiences and willing participants that are ready and willing to listen and learn and help us grow in our inclusivity and our authenticity to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Take a sandwich, have some water and some chips. Appreciate you.